John McEnroe just made the most controversial statement of his entire broadcasting career. The 7-time Grand Slam champion and tennis legend who idolized Rod Laver, who played against Pete Sampras, who watched Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and Novak Djokovic dominate for 2 decades, just declared that Carlos Alcaraz at 22 years old is more talented than all of them. Not better in terms of achievements. Not more accomplished. More talented. This guy Carlos Alcaraz at 21 or 22 is the most talented kid I have ever seen on the tennis court, Mackenroe said on ESPN during the US Open. That is more than Roger Federer, Nadal and Djokovic, who I have great respect for. The statement sent shockwaves through the tennis world. Because this isn't some random commentator trying to get attention with hot takes. This is John McEnroe, a man who's seen every generation of tennis, who competed at the highest level himself, who knows exactly what elite talent looks like. And he's saying Alcaraz's talent surpasses the big three. Not their careers, not their legacies, their raw talent at the same age. And the crazy part? He might actually be right. The immediate reaction from tennis fans was predictable. Federer fans lost their minds. How dare McEnroe suggest anyone is more talented than Roger? Djokovic supporters pointed to Novak's 24 Grand Slams and dominance as proof that he's the most talented ever. Nadal loyalists brought up Rafa's unmatched clay court mastery and fighting spirit. But here's what's fascinating. McEnroe wasn't backing down. He doubled down, tripled down, kept repeating the same message over multiple broadcasts. This wasn't a slip of the tongue or a hot take he regretted later. This was a considered opinion from someone who's thought deeply about what he's watching. I idolized Rod Laver. I played Pete Sampras, McEnroe continued. This guy is astoundingly good when he is on. One of the quickest guys who has ever been on the court. Incredible personality. The attitude is amazing. He has got every shot in the book. Everything. Everything. That's the key word. Not he's great on clay, or his forehand is amazing, or he's fast for his size. Everything. McEnroe is saying that Alcaraz's complete game, his toolkit, his ability to do anything on a tennis court, is more extensive than what Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic had at the same age. And when you actually look at what Alcaraz can do, when you watch him play with clear eyes, rather than through the lens of loyalty to previous champions, it's hard to argue with McEnroe's assessment. Let's break down what McEnroe is actually saying here, because it's important to understand the distinction he's making. He's not saying Alcaraz is better than the big three. He's not saying Alcaraz will have a better career. He's saying that purely in terms of raw talent, in terms of the range of skills and abilities, 22-year-old Alcaraz has more tools in his arsenal than 22-year-old Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic had. That's a specific claim. And it's one worth examining seriously rather than just dismissing, because it challenges our nostalgia for the big three era. What could 22-year-old Roger Federer do on a tennis court? Serve brilliantly. Hit a one-handed backhand that was already beautiful. Move gracefully. Attack the net better than almost anyone. But his forehand wasn't yet the weapon it would become. His defense wasn't elite. His physicality wasn't overwhelming. He was incredibly talented, obviously, but he was still developing into the complete player he'd become. What could 22-year-old Rafael Nadal do? Dominate on clay like no one before or since. Grind opponents into dust with relentless physicality and topspin. Fight for every point with unmatched intensity. But his serve was still a relative weakness. His hard-court game was still developing. He hadn't yet added the variety and tactical sophistication that came later in his career. What could 22-year-old Novak Djokovic do? Return better than anyone. Move exceptionally well. Defend from anywhere on the court. But his forehand was still inconsistent. His serve wasn't dominant. His mental game, while strong, hadn't yet developed into the unbreakable fortress it would become. Now what can 22-year-old Carlos Alcaraz do? Everything all three of them could do, plus more. He serves like a power player when he needs to. He can grind from the baseline like Nadal. He can attack the net like Federer. He has Djokovic's defensive ability and court coverage. Plus he has drop shots, volleys, creativity, and improvisational skills that none of them had at his age. That's what McEnroe is seeing. That's what he means by everything. And here's the really important context. Alcaraz isn't just matching what the big three could do at 22. He's doing it while winning Grand Slams at a faster rate than any of them did. By 22, Alcaraz already has 5 majors. Federer had 1. Nadal had 4. Djokovic had 1. So McEnroe's assessment isn't just theoretical. It's backed up by actual results. Alcaraz is winning more at this age than the big three were. That has to mean something. The comparison to Federer is particularly interesting because there are surface-level similarities. Both are aggressive players who like to attack. Both can hit spectacular winners from anywhere on the court. Both have that X-factor charisma that makes them fan favorites. Both play beautiful, entertaining tennis. But Alcaraz has dimensions to his game that young Federer didn't. The drop shot isn't just a trick shot for Alcaraz. It's a legitimate weapon he uses strategically to disrupt opponents' positioning. His movement and defense are at a level Federer never quite achieved. His ability to transition from defense to offense in a single shot is more Djokovic than Federer. Young Federer was more one-dimensional, in the best possible way. He attacked, he came forward, he tried to end points quickly. That's beautiful tennis. But Alcaraz can do that, and he can grind. He can defend. He can construct points tactically. He has more gears. The Nadal comparison is equally revealing. Alcaraz, like Nadal, is Spanish and grew up on clay. But while Nadal at 22 was primarily a clay court specialist who was still figuring out how to win majors on other surfaces, Alcaraz has already won Wimbledon twice and the US Open. He's proven himself on every surface. And even on clay, Alcaraz's game is different from Nadal's. Nadal grinded you down. Alcaraz can grind if he needs to, but he prefers to attack. Nadal's forehand with massive topspin was his signature weapon. Alcaraz has that shot too, but he also has flat forehands, slice backhands, drop shots, volleys, a more varied arsenal. Young Nadal was dominant, but specialized. Young Alcaraz is dominant and complete. The Djokovic comparison is where things get most interesting, because Djokovic's game is perhaps the most similar to Alcaraz's in terms of versatility. Both can do a bit of everything. Both are exceptional movers. Both have elite returns. Both can play offense or defense as needed. But Alcaraz at 22 has more variety than Djokovic at 22 had. Djokovic's game was machine-like in its consistency and efficiency. Alcaraz has that same efficiency, but with more creativity layered on top. The drop shots, the unexpected angles, the willingness to try things that might not work, but could produce magic. Young Djokovic was brilliant, but somewhat predictable. You knew he'd return everything, move perfectly, and wait for you to make a mistake. Alcaraz can do all that, but he'll also surprise you with shots you didn't see coming. Mackenroe's assessment becomes even more credible when you consider who he is and what he's seen. This is a guy who won 7 Grand Slams himself, who played in the era of Borg and Connors and Lendl, who watched Sampras dominate, who saw Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic all develop from promising young players into all-time greats. He's not making this statement from ignorance. He knows what generational talent looks like. He's seen it repeatedly throughout his decades in tennis. And he's saying Alcaraz's talent is more extensive than any of them. That carries weight. That's not a hot take from a casual observer. That's an informed opinion from one of the most knowledgeable people in tennis history. But Mackenroe isn't alone in this assessment. While he's been the most vocal about it, other respected voices in tennis have made similar observations. They see something in Alcaraz that goes beyond just being another great young player. They see a completeness of game that's unprecedented at this age. Patrick McEnroe, John's brother, and also a respected tennis analyst, has been more cautious. He's given Jannik Sinner the slight edge currently because of Sinner's consistency. But even he acknowledges what makes Alcaraz special. When you look at just the head-to-head, it favors Alcaraz very significantly. Because when Alcaraz is at his best, he can do things nobody else can do. Not Sinner. Not Djokovic in his prime. Not anybody. The other fascinating aspect of McEnroe's comments is what they reveal about how tennis has evolved. Because part of what makes Alcaraz so talented is that he's the product of modern tennis training and development. He's grown up with better coaching methods, better fitness training, better technology, better understanding of sports science. Players today are simply more complete than players from previous generations because they've had access to better development resources. That's not a knock on Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic. That's just acknowledging that the sport evolves and improves over time. Alcaraz represents the next evolution. He's taken everything the big three showed was possible and added new dimensions. He's the synthesis of all their best qualities plus innovations that are uniquely his own. That's what McEnroe is recognizing, that the talent level in tennis has reached a new peak. And the player exemplifying that peak is Carlos Alcaraz. Now, here's where it gets complicated. Does this mean Alcaraz will end up with a better career than the big three? Not necessarily. Because talent is only one component of achieving greatness. Longevity matters. Staying healthy matters. Maintaining motivation over 15 to 20 years matters. Making the right decisions about coaching, scheduling, and career management matters. Federer wasn't the most talented player of his generation. But he figured out how to stay healthy, how to evolve his game as he aged, how to maintain excellence into his late 30s. That's why he won 20 Grand Slams. Nadal's talent alone doesn't explain 22 Grand Slams. His relentless work ethic, his mental toughness, his refusal to ever give up on a point. Those intangibles were just as important as his talent. Djokovic has achieved more than Federer or Nadal despite arguably not being more talented than either. He's achieved it through superior fitness, smarter career management, and mental strength that may be unmatched in tennis history. So Alcaraz being more talented at 22 than they were doesn't guarantee he'll surpass their achievements. He still has to prove he can do it year after year for a decade or more. He has to stay healthy. He has to handle the pressure of expectations. He has to navigate all the challenges that come with being the best player in the world. But what Mackenroe is saying is that Alcaraz has given himself the best possible foundation for achieving that kind of sustained excellence. Because his game has no obvious weaknesses. There's no surface he can't win on. There's no situation where he's automatically disadvantaged. He can beat anyone anywhere if he plays his best. That versatility, that completeness, gives him more paths to victory than the big three had at the same age. And that's what talent means in this context. Alcaraz himself has responded to Mackenroe's praise with characteristic humility. "I cannot compare myself to them when they were my age," Alcaraz said. "But it doesn't matter what I have achieved at this age if I stagnate here. I want to continue growing in my career and get to where Djokovic, Rafa and Federer are." That response is perfect. It acknowledges the compliment without accepting the comparison. It shows Alcaraz understands that talent alone isn't enough. That he needs to build on this foundation and achieve sustained success over many years. It also shows maturity beyond his years. A less mature 22-year-old might embrace Mackenroe's assessment and use it to boost their ego. Alcaraz recognizes it as a challenge, something to live up to rather than something to rest on. The debate about whether Mackenroe is right will continue for years. Federer fans will never accept that anyone is more talented than Roger. Nadal supporters will argue that Rafa's fighting spirit and intensity constitute a form of talent that can't be measured by skills alone. Djokovic loyalists will point to Novak's achievements as proof that he had the most talent all along. All of those positions are defensible, because talent is somewhat subjective. Different people value different qualities. Some people think shot-making ability is the essence of talent. Others think consistency and reliability are more important. Others prioritize mental strength. What's not debatable is that Alcaraz has a more complete skill set at 22 than any of the big three had at the same age. That's demonstrable fact based on what we can observe about his game. He can do more things on a tennis court than they could at that age. Whether that makes him more talented depends on how you define talent. But by any reasonable definition that includes versatility, completeness, and the ability to win in multiple ways, Mackenroe has a strong case. The really exciting part about all this is that we get to watch it play out in real time. We don't have to speculate about whether Alcaraz's talent will translate into sustained excellence. We'll see it happen or not happen over the next 10 to 15 years. If Alcaraz stays healthy and motivated, if he continues improving the way Mackenroe thinks he will, if he fulfills the potential that his talent suggests is possible, we could be witnessing the early stages of the greatest tennis career ever played. That's a massive if. Lots of talented players have failed to live up to their potential for various reasons. But the foundation is there. The talent is undeniable. And one of the most respected voices in tennis history is telling us we're watching something special. Mackenroe's final word on the subject is perhaps most telling. "This guy is astoundingly good when he is on. One of the quickest guys who has ever been on the court. Incredible personality. The attitude is amazing. He has got every shot in the book. Everything. Everything." When John McEnroe uses that word, when he says a player at 22 is more talented than Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic were at the same age, it's worth taking seriously. Because he's not just seeing things we're not seeing. He's seeing things and understanding their significance in ways that come from decades of experience at the highest levels of tennis. Is Alcaraz more talented than Federer was at 22? According to one of the greatest players and most knowledgeable minds in tennis history, yes. And watching Alcaraz play, watching him do things on a tennis court that nobody else can do, it's hard to disagree. The big three had their era. They achieved things that may never be matched. They changed tennis forever. But eras end. And the next era is arriving. Led by a player whose talent, according to John McEnroe, exceeds even theirs. That's not disrespecting the big three. That's recognizing that tennis continues to evolve. That each generation builds on what came before. That greatness takes new forms.
And good night to all.
And right now, greatness looks like Carlos Alcaraz. More talented at 22 than Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic were. Not more accomplished. Not guaranteed to have better careers. But more talented. McEnroe said it. The results support it. And anyone watching with clear eyes can see it. The question now isn't whether Alcaraz has the talent. That's settled. The question is what he'll do with it. And that's what makes the next decade of tennis so exciting to anticipate. Do you agree with McEnroe that Alcaraz is more talented than young Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic? Or is this disrespectful to the big three's legacy? And can Alcaraz turn this talent into a career that matches or exceeds theirs? Drop your take in the comments, and let's debate whether McEnroe is a visionary or went too far with this comparison. Subscribe because Alcaraz's career is just getting started, and we'll be here to cover every major moment as he chases the big three's records. Hit that like button if you think McEnroe might actually be right. Sometimes the truth is uncomfortable, but that doesn't make it less true. There's another dimension to this debate that's worth exploring. The pressure that comes with being labelled as more talented than the big three. Because McEnroe's comments, while complimentary, have put an enormous target on Alcaraz's back. Every time he loses now, people will question whether McEnroe was wrong. Every time he doesn't win a Grand Slam, critics will say he's not living up to his talent. That's a heavy burden for a 22-year-old to carry. Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic all had years to develop before the weight of expectations became crushing. They were allowed to grow into greatness gradually. Alcaraz is having greatness thrust upon him before he's even reached his peak. How he handles that pressure will determine whether McEnroe's assessment proves prophetic or premature. Because history is littered with players who had all the talent in the world, but couldn't handle the mental and emotional demands of sustained excellence at the highest level. The comparison also raises questions about how we evaluate talent across eras. Tennis in 2025 is fundamentally different from tennis in 2005 or 1995. The speed of the game has increased. The physicality has intensified. The technology has advanced. Training methods have evolved. Is it fair to compare Alcaraz's talent to what Federer could do at 22 when they're playing essentially different sports? Federer at 22 was using different racket technology, playing on slower courts, competing against players who weren't as fit or well-trained as current professionals. If you could transport 22-year-old Federer to 2025 with modern equipment and training, would he be as complete as Alcaraz? Possibly. Or if you sent Alcaraz back to 2003 with period-appropriate equipment, would he dominate the way Federer eventually did? Hard to say. These cross-era comparisons are inherently problematic because context matters enormously in sports. But they're also inevitable and fascinating because they help us understand the evolution of the game and appreciate what makes current players special. What McEnroe is really saying, when you strip away the provocative phrasing, is that Alcaraz represents the current pinnacle of tennis development. He's the most advanced 22-year-old product we've seen yet. That's a statement about progress and evolution, more than it is a knock on previous generations. The big three themselves would probably acknowledge this. Federer has spoken many times about how the game has evolved, and how current players are more complete than his generation was. Nadal has praised Alcaraz effusively and recognized that the young Spaniard has skills he didn't have at the same age. Djokovic has called Alcaraz incredible and acknowledged his completeness. So the controversy around McEnroe's statement might be more about how fans react than about what the legends themselves think. Because the actual champions understand that each generation builds on what came before. The tactical sophistication Alcaraz displays at 22 is particularly noteworthy. Young Federer had brilliant instincts, but his tactical awareness was still developing. He'd make decisions that looked amazing when they worked but questionable when they didn't. Alcaraz seems to have that tactical maturity already built in. He knows when to attack, when to defend, when to change pace, when to go for broke. That's usually something that comes with experience. Veterans develop pattern recognition, and tactical awareness after years of matches and different situations. Somehow Alcaraz has accelerated that learning curve. Whether it's because of better coaching, more complete training, or just innate understanding, he plays with the tactical sophistication of someone much older. The versatility extends to his ability to beat different types of players. Some champions have struggled against specific playing styles throughout their careers. Federer had issues with big servers. Nadal sometimes struggled against defensive counterpunchers. Djokovic had that weird vulnerability to big-hitting underdogs. What player type does Alcaraz struggle against? It's genuinely hard to say. He's beaten power players. He's beaten defensive grinders. He's beaten touch players. He's beaten big servers. He's beaten everyone different ways, depending on what the match required. That adaptability is a form of talent that's harder to quantify than shot-making ability, but equally important for sustained success. And it's something he has in abundance at an age when most players are still figuring out how to handle specific challenges. Another aspect of Alcaraz's talent that separates him is his ability to raise his level in big moments. Some talented players shrink when the pressure peaks. Alcaraz seems to expand. The bigger the stage, the more important the point, the better he plays. That's not just talent. That's a rare combination of talent and mental makeup that produces clutch performances. Young Federer could do spectacular things, but wasn't always clutch. He lost finals he should have won because he couldn't execute under maximum pressure. Young Nadal was incredibly clutch, but primarily on clay. Young Djokovic was still developing his closers mentality. Alcaraz at 22 is already clutch across all situations and surfaces. That might be the most valuable talent of all. Because tennis ultimately isn't about who can hit the best shots in practice. It's about who can execute when everything is on the line. And Alcaraz has proven repeatedly that he can do exactly that. The physical gifts are obvious, the speed, the power, the flexibility, the endurance. But the mental and emotional talents are equally impressive. The joy he plays with, the lack of visible fear or doubt, the ability to reset after bad moments, the competitive fire that burns without consuming him. That complete package, physical, technical, tactical, mental, and emotional excellence all at once, is what Mackenroe sees. And it's what makes the comparison to the big three at the same age so compelling. Because while each of them had some of these qualities at 22, none of them had all of them to the degree Alcaraz does. The counterargument to Mackenroe is that achievements matter more than talent. That Djokovic's 24 Grand Slams prove he's more talented than anyone else regardless of what they could do at 22. That longevity and sustained excellence are the true measures of talent, not peaks or potential. That's fair. There's an argument that talent should be judged by what you actually accomplish over a career rather than by what you theoretically could do at any given moment. By that standard, the big three's talent is proven and Alcaraz's is still mostly potential. But Mackenroe isn't making a career achievement argument. He's making a talent at the same age argument. And by that specific measure, his case is strong. Alcaraz at 22 can do more things on a tennis court than Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic could at 22. That's demonstrable. Whether he'll use that talent to build a career that matches theirs remains to be seen. But the foundation is there. The toolkit is complete. The potential is maximized. Now it's about execution over time. And that's what makes this such an exciting moment in tennis. Because we're watching someone who might be the most talented player ever at this age, trying to prove he can turn that talent into the greatest career ever. The journey from potential to achievement is where legends are made. And Alcaraz is right at the beginning of that journey. Mackenroe has given us the scouting report. This is the most talented 22-year-old ever. Now we get to watch whether that talent produces the results to back up the assessment. That's compelling drama that will play out over the next decade plus. Do you agree with Mackenroe that Alcaraz is more talented than young Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic? Or is this disrespectful to the big three's legacy? And can Alcaraz turn this talent into a career that matches or exceeds theirs? Drop your take in the comments, and let's debate whether Mackenroe is a visionary or went too far with this comparison. Subscribe because Alcaraz's career is just getting started, and we'll be here to cover every major moment as he chases the big three's records. Hit that like button if you think Mackenroe might actually be right. Sometimes the truth is uncomfortable, but that doesn't make it less true.